try that one more time. Every day, we make a decision on the clothing that we wear. Regardless of how much time and effort we put into that decision, whether seconds of consideration or minutes of deep contemplation, the clothing we wear reflects our taste and personality in some way or another. But within this 21st century, we have come constantly surrounded by the need to buy new clothes and throw out clothes. This has ultimately led to huge amounts of clothing ending up in our landfills. 800,000 tons of textiles end up in Australian landfills every single year. 2/3 of those textiles are made from synthetic fibres, which will still be decomposing long after we've all passed. So we need to break out of this consumerism mindset and change our way of thinking so that no longer will we throw out clothing when it gets a simple tear, rip, or spill, but rather consider the individual value of that clothing. Centuries ago, clothing was a valuable source. Like property, it would be written into the wills of those passing on. My son will inherit my 2 brown woolen socks. They were that valuable. They would tend to their sheep since they were foaled. They would shear them, dye the fabric, spin the threads in order to weave the fabrics to make that clothing. But today, within this modern society, we can simply enter a retail store and buy a shirt for $3. We've completely lost that sense of pride that those who had made their clothing or had passed on their clothing had. So I want you to look at the clothing you have on today. Do you know who made your clothes or what your clothing was made from? Because all we really have is the tag. But how much does a tag saying "Made in Bangladesh" really tell us? You can make assumptions that it was made by underpaid workers who worked long hours for very poor pay and in harsh conditions. Likewise, you can make assumptions for clothing with tags that say "Made in Australia." We can assume that it was made ethically, or that it used Australian resources like Australian grown cotton, or potentially employed Indigenous people. But what about what's in our clothing? Our tags will say if it has 30% cotton, 100% polyester, or 10% elastane, but it doesn't tell us about the chemical dyes that were used to color it. It doesn't tell us about the pesticides that were put in while harvesting and growing that cotton. And it also doesn't tell us about how much petroleum was mined out of our earth in order to create that polyester. Because, who really looks at the tags on their clothing? We have completely disconnected from the roots of our society, and we need to tap back into the old methods of making and wearing our clothes so that we can build a greater connection. This will mean that when we get a spill or a tear, or our clothing wears old, instead of simply throwing it out, we will consider the alternatives. So how would we add more meaning to our clothing? This is a question that I have been exploring for the past year. Before I I even was thinking of sustainability as the question. I was questioning how can I add more individuality to my clothes. I wanted a sense of pride, just like they had when I wore my clothes. 4 years ago, I embarked on this journey of self-expression, with no idea that it would lead me to stand before all of you today to talk about my passion for making things with my hands, and my passion for sustainability. We had just gotten a brand new pack of huge Sharpies. And I had a pair of white shoes that were just begging for some inspiration and some creativity. It is these shoes that I brought with me today that sparked that light in me to continue and to further explore different mediums. And before you today, I have brought a wrap that really demonstrates how much I've learned over these past 4 years. Clothing is a form of self-expression that we all utilize every single day, but we are limited by simply buying at a store, and instead should look into new ways. Since then, I have been proud to show my clothing. After the shoes, I explored other mediums, which was embroidery in this case, of a bead. And I would have watched countless YouTube videos on just how to embroider in order to learn those skills. I went on to embroider on a green shirt that I was no longer wearing as much, and instead inspired me to wear it far more. Last year, I embarked and really leapt into the world of secondhand buying. I would buy clothes that was far too large for me and went through ways of ensuring that they would fit. So when I bought a pair of flared pants, I made sure that by sewing down the sides, I could, make them even more flared. As well as adding elastics to the inside of my skirt. And no matter how absurd the ideas that I had were, I knew that if I persevered, I could achieve them. So when I saw a pair of large brown pants, and I had a dream that I could make them into comfortable baggy pants, I was able to do so by folding up the bottom of the pants, adding elastic, and further individualizing it by adding my favorite flower, a snowdrop, to the leg. And when second-hand stores even had their limitations, I went on to sew. I used clothing that I already was wearing as patterns for inspiration on how to make my new items. And so when I sewed the waistband of my skirt far too large, I added a clasp, which now works as its main feature. And when I grew absolutely frustrated by the fact that I couldn't fit a book into the pocket of my skirt or pants, I had to make absurdly large pockets for my next skirt. And so that is what I am wearing today. Skirt pockets that can not only hold one book, not 2 books, but 4 books. And I mean, who doesn't want that? So this has all worked for me and represents my style and my personality. But now I have to ask, what would work for you? How could you keep the those pair of pants that you don't wear anymore out of landfill, whether they have a hole in them or have simply worn down? Or how could you continue to wear that shirt that has stretched its collar far longer into the future? How could you reduce your impact on the environment? It is so easy to go along with the consumerism, but I ask you to push back against that flow and not let it take you in its current. So I ask you to look at these 4 next points and buy less or buy secondhand, learn how to mend and sew, build connections with your clothing that will last, and make your clothing last longer. So, in order to revive your wardrobe and reduce your waste, I ask you to fashion a sustainable future for us all, built on your individuality. Thank you.